hello, everybody. Yes, I am the principal of Brand New, which is a branding and marketing consultancy. I have worked on about 100 brands and done marketing plans for over 125 different countries. I have launched and nurtured multi-million-dollar consumer brands for Fortune 500 companies. And now I am bringing that kind of big idea thinking and disciplined approach to myriad nonprofits that I work with in arts and culture, education, social and legal service sectors, and more. And I'm honored to be with you today to talk about how you can respond to the marketing challenges that you're all facing right now, how to rethink your approach to resolving these issues, and how to revitalize your organization by deploying some actionable tactics. And there is a checklist handout that accompanies this presentation that's available on the resource page. And it has some, as I said, very actionable tips and a lot of resources that you can start using right now. So diving right in, let's set the stage where we are at. So we all started to learn the term, the new normal. And that was, COVID-19, the worst pandemic we've seen since the 1918 Spanish flu. And accompanying that, in the new normal, we've had the highest rate of unemployment since the Great Depression and a very uncertain economy. And that's kind of brought us into the now normal, where we're seeing the biggest civil rights movement that we've seen since the 1960s. So we are going through quite a bit right now. We're living in tremendous uncertainty. None of us really could have predicted everything that we're going through right now. And so it really begs the question, what's next? What's the next normal? And how do we plan for the next normal from a marketing perspective? So none of us obviously have a crystal ball, and so it's hard to predict, but there is one thing that we do know. For our organizations, the one constant is going to be your mission. Your mission is not going to change, but the way you deliver on your mission and the way you position yourself within your sector and the way you message about your mission will evolve, but your mission will remain the same. And probably about the only other a constant that we can count on is change. I heard somebody describing trying to do marketing for our organizations right now as steering a raft through the rapids and kind of hoping we don't get hit by the rocks and hoping we don't fall out. And I think we can probably all relate to that feeling. So we know, kind of in addition to new normal, the other buzzword we keep hearing is pivot. And really the goal for our marketing right now, we're not trying to figure out how we get back to the way we did things before. That's not the goal. What we really want to do is pivot and tap into new strategies for success. We really have to be adaptable, and we have to look to really not just survive through this crisis, but to thrive, even amidst all this uncertainty and all this disruption. So we really want to start by asking the right questions that are going to get us to a clearer understanding of this current environment that we're living in and have a better grasp on the trends that are going to impact our ability to deliver on our mission and to market our organizations. So we want to start by identifying what factors we actually need to respond to as marketers. And then, as I said, we're not trying to go back to the way things were. We really are going to look to transform and to rebuild and to rethink the way that we're doing our marketing. And the positive note is that this will allow us to actually revitalize our organizations. This is, if you look at it kind of glass half full, it's an opportunity for change and for growth. And we have to embrace that change and innovate accordingly. We have to remember these changes, they're not going to go away when the crisis ends. A lot of this is going to be permanent. It's going to be the way we live for a long time. So we really have to ensure that our organizations are well positioned to address the next normal. So let's start with our positioning and changes to the way we're positioned right now in our sectors or in the marketplace, and the subsequent messaging that goes along with our new positioning. So again, our mission stays the same, but based on shifts, the way we deliver it may change. And it's really kind of a unique opportunity that we have right now. We're not in our daily routines. We're not in the daily weeds. So we have this chance to kind of pull back a little bit and look at our organizations through a different lens, a little bit more objectively, and have sort of a clear view of how our organizations are positioned in our particular sector. Things have shifted, obviously, and to establish our positioning now, we have to make sure that our strategies are aligned with what our stakeholders need from us right now. And we also have to look at our competition and where their positioning is and how that's going to impact us. How have they pivoted, and what does that mean for our organizations? So in terms of positioning, let's start with our target audience, which is our stakeholders, those people that we want to reach. And as I said, do our current strategies and messaging align with where they are right now? So things have changed for everybody, obviously, and we really need to dig in and understand our stakeholders' mindset in order to position our organization properly. And we have to address what they want and need from us going into this next normal. So how do we know what our stakeholders are thinking right now? Where do they stand? So much has changed. How do we put our finger on the pulse and respond appropriately? How do we change our positioning and message to them appropriately? And I think in the past, we would have just kind of tried to figure out, tried to guess or surmise where they are right now and gone in and changed our positioning and subsequently tweaked some of our marketing messages. But right now, things are so different that before we start to communicate, we have to listen first. So that's where we need to rethink. We need to do a lot of listening and then communicate. Our stakeholders obviously should always be heard, but right now, if we really listen hard, we'll be able to, or they will tell us what they want from us. So again, the rethinking is listen first and then communicate. So as we look to deploy this strategy so that we can revitalize our organizations, if we really do a good job with the listening, we'll be able to improve our positioning and create compelling messaging that will resonate with our stakeholders. So when we listen, we're going to be able to understand, how is our reputation out there? How much are people talking about our particular organization? How much are they talking about our mission? How much are they talking about our cause in general? Who are the people that are talking about our mission? Where are the people talking about our mission? And what else do they have an affinity for? So one of the easiest kind of low-hanging fruit ways to start to listen to our stakeholders, it's easy, it's cost-effective, is to take shareholder stories and anecdotes. And these are things that you can just collect from the people who are on the front lines of your organization. You don't need tech, you don't need a database. Of course, these stories are not reliable for measurement per se. The other danger I've seen with using these stories is they get kind of retold and retold through the organization, and as they get repeated, sometimes they can take on more importance than maybe they should. But I think if you collect enough stories and you start to see patterns emerge, it can start to give you some cues about where your stakeholders' minds are at. Another great listening tool where you get true feedback and you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth is to use surveys. And online surveys are quick, they're effective, and they're cost effective, because I know right now budgets are tight. So using things like a Survey Monkey are wonderful. I see a lot of the nonprofits that I work for, again, they're trying to kind of guess what their stakeholders are thinking and their donors, or they're holding on kind of these old beliefs, almost like fables that kind of float around the organization, or they're holding on to old survey data, which really isn't relevant anymore. So doing a survey is really a quick way to get updated, accurate information. So some of the best practices I'll just run through if you do choose to do surveys. It's a great idea if you've asked certain questions that are still pertinent in the past to ask them again. That way the original survey serves as sort of a benchmark and you can see how far you've moved the needle. I always like to ask people to describe the organization, like if they were telling a friend about it, how would they describe you? And I'm always very surprised with the answers here, because I often find the people who are closest to the organization, like your board members who should be your sort of ambassadors in the community, often don't have a completely accurate view of the organization. But whatever you learn about what your stakeholders, how they perceive your organization, it can start to give you some cues about where you need to tweak your messaging so that it's not as murky, so that you can be much clearer about what the organization stands for. And then it's a good idea to ask that question again, like in a year. And that's kind of your report card to see if your marketing efforts worked. Do people now have a better understanding of what your organization is about? Obviously important to ask the right questions, otherwise it's kind of a garbage in, garbage out exercise. Always try to keep the survey very short, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and make sure you tell people up front it's only 5 or 10 minutes, because that improves the chances that they will complete the survey. In the past, I always said that you should use an incentive. People kind of got used to that, a gift card drawing if they complete the survey. But in actuality right now, because so many people are home, they're actually filling out surveys because they're kind of liking giving their opinions. So you may not actually have to spend the money on any kind of an incentive prize. You also want to make sure that your questions are not biased. You don't want to lead the witness to get the answer that you desire. Ideally on your survey, you want a mix of a qualitative, which are your open-ended questions. It's a good chance to really hear what your respondents are, what comes to them sort of top of mind. And then also quantitative questions, which are kind of those radio button questions. And just FYI, those are much easier to tabulate when the survey's over. So, the survey can be really a great data point to inform how you're going to reposition yourself and how you're going to change your messaging. And you can even take some of those open-ended questions and some of the language that your respondents are using and play it back to them when you're crafting your new messaging. The other thing I will say is, you're not going to get all positive feedback, so you have to be very careful to not jettison the bad things you hear and just focus on the good. You really need to take it all in. I know when I've worked with some very large companies who had huge market research budgets, we'd spend all this money and do massive focus groups, and they would just kind of cherry pick the responses to support whatever case they wanted to make about introducing a new product or a brand. But you really need to be open-minded and take everything in and learn. And then don't forget to share the information you learned and what you're going to do about it with those respondents, so that they can see that it matters to them that they gave you their opinions, and also share it with your boards and your staff. So another way to listen beyond surveys is social listening. And that's something you can do on your own for free, but it's very time consuming. Or you can also use software, which is not that expensive. And I'll talk about a couple companies like Sprout Social, which is an example I have up here. So with social listening, when you're listening across social media and news and blogs and everything going on online, You can manage your reputation, ensure that you're trusted, and learn about issues surrounding your organization or your cause that you might not be aware of. You can monitor the sentiment of your stakeholders. Um, and if you see that there's some negative things going on regarding either your specific organization or your mission or cause, if you are deploying some of this software, you can take a deeper dive and understand a little bit more about that so you can respond. You can do custom keyword monitoring. You can find influencers who may be able to support your organization, or also brand advocates, just people who talk a lot about either your organization per se or your mission or your cause, and look to kind of pull them into your organization. You can find media outlets or even specific reporters who are talking about your cause or your mission or your organization, and that allows you to target them for future PR opportunities. And, you know, don't forget, social media is social, so it's a dialogue. So if there are conversations going on that you're finding, again, around your organization or your mission or your cause, you can join the conversation. So again, you can do this on your own for free, but time consuming. There are tools like Sprout Social or Awario. They can track conversations across all these different forums by keywords, by phrases. You know, and as I said, they look at social media, news, forums, blogs, websites, and they do look at where these conversations are happening, what the general sentiment is, related topics to your organization. They're probably about $29 a month for like a basic plan, and they do offer nonprofit discounts. And beyond just kind of all the data points, they do social analytics where they actually analyze the data and connect the dots, so it has some meaning. Another listening tool that's free is Google Trends, where you can put in keywords or key phrases related to your cause or your mission or your organization name or your competition. And you can kind of see what searches are going on Google in real time around the topics that are pertinent to you and your cause. And then another form of listening that you probably don't think of as listening per se is metrics, because metrics let you understand your stakeholders' behavior. And there are a lot of free tools here. So Google Analytics, obviously, if your website is not enabled for Google Analytics, you want to make sure you're using that. There's also native insight tools on Facebook and Instagram that you can use. And it will really help you to learn a lot more about, you know, again, who your stakeholders are, who your competition is, what content your stakeholders are engaging with, when they are engaging with it, so you know, like when to post things, where your traffic is coming from, be it organic traffic or referral traffic or UTM, where you see the very specific URL that's sending you traffic. You know, you can start to see if there's certain websites that are sending you traffic. You want to make sure that you develop a relationship with them because you want them to continue sending you traffic. So you want to keep your link on their website. You can kind of start to understand why you and not your competition. So a lot of free tools built into whatever platforms you're using. Again, another way of listening. And then another way of learning about your stakeholders, although it's not as nuanced as any of this, but just if you want kind of straight demographic information about your stakeholders now, lots of websites you can use: US Census Bureau, USA.gov, Pew Research Center, City Town Info. So, and there's more, but just, you know, if you're just looking for straight demographic information about your stakeholders. And then the last thing, which you're probably using already, is Google Alerts, which is a notification service. You can set it up for your organization, for your cause, for your competitors, for related topics, and they will send you emails when they find new results on web pages, newspaper articles, blogs, scientific research, if that's what your nonprofit is involved in. So they'll send you anything that matches the search terms that you submit. So in addition, so when you're thinking about your positioning, you want to know about your stakeholders and where they stand now so that you can reposition your organization, create compelling messaging. In addition to understanding about your stakeholders, you want to look at your competition and understand what's going on. You want to look at those competitors who are in your same space, who are competing with you for share of mind and for share of wallet, and understand how whatever's going on with them is going to impact you and how you want to position yourselves relevant to them. So what do we want to rethink in terms of the competition right now? Well, because of the crisis, are they surviving? Like some of them are disappearing. They're not making it through this. So if they're gone, what does that mean for you? How does that open up opportunities for you? A lot of them are merging or collaborating with other organizations, which makes them stronger and more powerful. So what does that mean for the positioning of your organization? How could that be a threat to you? What is it about their content that's working or not working? Are there things that you want to emulate that they're doing, or are there things that you think you can do better than the way they're doing it? So as you look to use your competitive information to revitalize your organization and how you're going to position yourselves and subsequently create new messaging around that, same idea as the stakeholders. You want to listen before you act. So with competitors, you're your listening could be called reconnaissance, right? That's what we kind of say when we're kind of spying on the competition. We're doing our reconnaissance work. So you're going to use all those same social listening tools and your Google tools that we just talked about in terms of learning about what's going on with your competition. You can also look at their Facebook pages and their top fans page to understand who they are targeting, who's their audience, who's really behind their organization, or their big cheerleaders. And then there are a lot of competitive research tools so that you can see what your competitors are doing well. So some of them are Alexa Site Overview, which lets you see where you submit your competitor's URL. You can see where their traffic is coming from, what keywords are driving their traffic, what are similar sites to theirs. SimilarWeb is another tool where you can look at top traffic sources, visitor information, also related sites that are being browsed in addition to your direct competition. Raven, you can look at keywords that are being used to search for your competition and social media shares for their particular domain. What runs where measures your competitors' ads that they're running and what performed well. You can also use Computer Keyword Matrix, which looks at search terms that your target audience uses to find not only you, but your competition. And then Tagboard uses hashtags to collect social media posts. And all this information is going to be on the checklist, so you don't have to write it all down right now. So the next thing that you want to respond to vis-a-vis all of this is the learning on where your stakeholders are now and where your competitors are now. And in that vein, you're going to be rethinking your positioning and your subsequent messaging, as we said, based on what you're learning about your target audience sentiment, in terms of their kind of current needs and wants, and your competitors in terms of new opportunities for you and where you need to work harder to compete. So based on what you're learning about your competition, can you make different claims now about your organization? Like maybe if they didn't survive the crisis, you're the only one who's doing something, or you're the biggest, or you are the the first to do something. So as you start to revitalize and think about your messaging, and you kind of have this better understanding of your target audience sentiment, based on that, where their heads are at, and based on your brand DNA, that's kind of your litmus test for whether you should be joining certain kinds of conversations. Is it authentic? Is it, is that really who your brand is, to get into some of these conversations that are happening right now? Here's an example with Coke, the commentary on COVID. If you do get into those conversations, you really want to make sure you're always leading with empathy and that you're being authentic. If it's not really in your wheelhouse, maybe you shouldn't go there. You want to respond to what you learn from the survey. And again, if you're finding that your stakeholders are kind of murky and they're not clear on what you're all about, that you have to clarify your messaging in that regard. Responding to all your social listening. If there's negative sentiment out there, you want to respond to that quickly with your messaging. In terms of your competitive learning, you want to see where there's white space for you. Where can your organization fill the voids, and where can you demonstrate that you deliver on your mission in a better way than they do? And you want to just kind of now take all this data and make more informed choices about your positioning, and revamp your messaging and put it on your website, on your social media bios, in your PR boilerplate, any of your about us statements, wherever your messaging appears. So this is, your kind of checklist for this segment of the discussion. But again, all of this will be on the handout that you can get on the resource page. So now let's talk about communications with stakeholders and how they've been impacted, or how they will be impacted, your marketing during the crisis. We know that humans want connection, that's natural. But with the current crisis, as marketers, we're really having to find new ways to communicate. So what are we responding to right now? Well, if you're an organization that relies on buildings or events for interaction, or if you have members, or if you're in the arts, if you rely on that to deliver your mission, you're really facing a challenge right now because you don't have face-to-face contact. So what do you have to rethink? Well, you have to rethink your communications in terms of any face-to-face communication you had, even if it's the coffee with the donor. You have to now shift to a virtual interaction. So on a positive note, we know that everybody has a constant connection to their devices, their phones, their watches, whatever it might be. Everybody's always connected. But the hard thing that we have to rethink is that when we shift to a virtual connection with our stakeholders, you also have to really maintain that humanized approach. The other thing is you want to stay connected with your stakeholders. So just because you don't see them face to face, don't stop communicating. So the idea is you really want this fully integrated communications plan. You want a variety of content that you're serving up to them, and you want to make sure all the content that you're creating supports your strategic goals. So in terms of revitalizing with virtual communications, let's start with social media. As you would probably imagine, social media usage is up. People are sort of hanging out more. There's more of a community feel, kind of the way it used to be when like Facebook first started. It's kind of going back to that because people are craving connection so much. For the people who are on social media interacting with nonprofits, 55% of them are inspired to take action of some sort. 68% of them will donate. 53% of them will volunteer, and 43% of them will attend an event. A great thing, again, when resources are tight, it is free. And we always would say, social media sort of leveled the playing field because the little guys can do as much as the big companies. However, there is a caveat. The algorithms are constantly changing on social media, and now they're favoring any brands that do advertising. So if you don't advertise on social media, your content is not getting served up to as many people as those companies and brands and nonprofits that do advertising. Another thing with social media, especially when resources are strapped and everybody is at their wits' end, you don't have to be on every platform. You should look at the demographics for each platform and choose only the ones that make sense for your organization. There's no need to be on all of them. And when you're creating your content, you can't really universally say, oh, videos work or photos work. You have to really look at your own insights and see what works for your particular organization and do more of that. So there aren't kind of universal things that work across the board. Obviously video is great for storytelling in general, but another change, in the past we always thought keep our videos short, people don't have the attention span. Well, now people are watching them. So with the algorithm now on Facebook, for example, videos that are 3 minutes or longer are getting more impressions, more reach than other videos. And then it kind of has a halo effect over all the content for that particular brand. So if you are going to do video, make sure it's 3 minutes or more. It doesn't have to be fancy. You can shoot it on your phone. One thing I'll talk about a little later when we talk about resources being tight is the good news part of it is the bar is not set as high. People are not expecting high production value these days. So shooting it on your phone is fine. And now LinkedIn, you can even do videos on LinkedIn. The other thing that's shifted in terms of social media, you may have had a handle on your insights and understood when your stakeholders are on your Facebook page, what day, what time. Well, now everybody's lives are, in upheaval and people are working from home and they got kids going to school. So their behaviors change. So those patterns that you may have relied on before no longer are true. So make sure you are checking your insights because people are on your social media at different times than they were before. Another thing to note about social media is ad prices are lower than they've been in, I don't know, like 9 months, but also the click-through rates are lower. So if you run an ad, you may get eyeballs, but you're not going to necessarily get clicks. Make sure that you are, when you're posting any social media, that you always have your website because the goal is to get people to, you want to drive traffic to your site. You want to remember that it is social. Like I said before, it is a dialogue. So you want to make sure that you are having a conversation with your stakeholders. It's always great to get your board and your staff to post things. So if you make it really easy for them, they can post and get things to be more viral. And then the last thing I'll just say is make sure that you're looking at your metrics. Otherwise, you're kind of flying blind. So you really want to make sure you're looking at the metrics, understanding what's working and what's not, so that you can pivot accordingly. So also in terms of virtual communication, the shift to virtual emails, people get on average, I think, about 88 emails a day. So the key right now to higher engagement with emails is to use personalization. That increases your engagement by about 20%. Always be very prompt with your emails. So if you get a donor gift or if somebody comes to a Zoom event, make sure you follow quickly with emails. Always make sure you're testing your emails on every device because obviously people use their phones all the time. So you really want to make sure it's rendering correctly on mobile. I always like to send my emails for my clients at like 6:30 in the morning. The thought being, unfortunately, the first thing a lot of us do when we wake up is we go right for our phone and we look at our emails. So if you send it at 6:30, your email is going to be at the top of the inbox. Again, patterns have changed. People's, lives are different than they were, but I'm still seeing that is working pretty well. Another thing that you can do with your email, if you're not kind of sure what's working, what's not, is some A/B testing where you, let's say you want to improve your open rates. What you'll do is you can try 2 different subject lines. So you just kind of do a randomized test where you split your email in half and you use one control. So you isolate it to one control. So you're just going to change the subject line. So you're going to try maybe a standard subject line that you were using, and then maybe you try a subject line that's provocative or, intriguing, or maybe it's tongue-in-cheek, and you test it and you see which gets the higher open rate. So you've isolated it to that one factor, and you know that certain kind of subject line can work better. If you're saying you're not getting very good click-through rates within your email, again, you can try a new call to action button. Maybe it's really big and it's colorful or whatever, and you isolate that one control and you test, same thing, randomized test, and you try 2 different approaches to your call to action button and see which performs better, and then how you can improve your click-through rates. I mean, best to try it a few times, not just once and draw a conclusion from that, but really great thing to try to improve your opens and your clicks. Also, if you're doing virtual events and you send emails about them, you can send calendar invites so people are actually putting it into their calendars and they don't forget to attend your event. And if you are going to send videos through your emails, better not to embed them. It's better to do links. Embedding them, email sizes can get pretty big. And then also in terms of communication, it's not virtual per se, but direct mail. Obviously more costly, obviously more time consuming to create, but again, since people are home, they are reading. So, your newsletter or whatever it might be, it's going to get read now. People are reading more than they did. And kind of this idea that if everybody's online and zigging, you may want to zag and do direct mail to just kind of stand out more, versus a sea of emails. Maybe you do send a direct mail piece. There's even an app you can use called Felt, F-E-L-T, that creates random custom cards that are handwritten and actually have stamps. So, they do everything within 24 hours. They print them, they send them for you, and you kind of write your note with your finger on your phone, and then they create a handwritten note and send it for you. So you can do direct mail that way. It's about, between like $6 and $15 a month for the service, and they do nonprofit discounts. So in terms of your communications plan, variety of content. So the last thing that I'm just going to talk about is your resources, or I should say stretched resources. So what are we responding to here? Well, we're responding to a new way of working. More people, we're not in the office anymore, we're working from home. 69% of nonprofits say that not only are people working from home right now, but they say 69% of people will continue to work from home in the future. And 38% of nonprofits say that they've reduced their headcounts. So in terms of your marketing, you're working from home, you're working, you've lost headcount. So, it's a lot to respond to.
Apologies for the interruption. This is just a friendly reminder that now is the time to wrap up so that we could proceed to our next session.
Okay. All right. So we're almost done. So in terms of rethinking, basically the rethinking is you're doing more and you're doing it with less. You have to be raising awareness and gaining support and building loyalty and managing your reputation and responding to the changing environment, increasing revenue, increasing participation, volunteers, all with a smaller team and a limited budget. So very quickly, some ways to revitalize in terms of this. And I see this even all the time with nonprofits, not even just during this crisis, but everybody tries to do 10 things and they kind of spread themselves thin and they don't do any of them well. So the idea of just choosing 5 things, do them really well, choose the 5 things that are going to give you your biggest bang for your buck, your greatest ROI. And then also look to simplify your life. You know, you have these stretched resources. So number 1, you have to be nimble right now. Talk to your organization about simplifying some of the bureaucracy. You know, ask your superiors to just trust you. Don't get, you know, where you don't have to get approval on everything that you're doing, because you have to move fast. You have to be nimble right now. As I said, the bar is lowered in terms of production value and those kinds of things. So you don't have to go overboard in terms of the kinds of materials you're creating. People are more forgiving right now. Try to batch your work. So if you're working on a certain kind of campaign, do everything together, or your Facebook posts, batch them together. It's just an easier way to work. You can use certain software for your social media that does posts across all your social media. You just have to be careful that it's not a one size fits all. You have to change the messaging based on what the social media platform is. You can use tools like Canva. So if you can't afford a designer right now, Canva has 20,000 templates, 1,000 fonts, can resize your photos for different social media. They have a photo bank. You can use it for free for the basic version. So that's another way that you can simplify and be more cost effective. And then look to repurpose content that you already have. If you don't have the time or the money to go out and create new content, just look to repurpose what you have. And the last thing I'll just say is Google Ad Grants is something that a lot of nonprofits don't know exists. Great cost saving measure. It's been around for like over 10 years, but a lot of people don't know about it. But basically they give every nonprofit $10,000 a month for free ads on Google search. They do it forever. There's no time limit. There's no limit to the number of nonprofits they'll do it for. So it's something that everybody really should take advantage of. There's unlimited grants. So that's something else to look into that it's good if your resources are cut from a cost perspective. And here's your checklist. And like I said, there's a full checklist that covers off all the tips and resources that I discussed today. So I don't know, are we at time, Angelica? Or?
We are at time, but thank you so much, Stacy.
I'm sorry I didn't get to questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.